there's something about about sort of the corporate world, the workplace, where you kind of remember, you're kind of reminded that it's a very fragile situation. It's a very fragile environment. When you work for a company, there is the illusion of stability, safety net. You have a paycheck that comes in, but you quickly kind of realize that that safety net doesn't really exist. That paycheck can go away at any given moment. And you sort of remember that in the natural world, there's no such thing as a safety net. The only safety net is the food that you've gathered and that you've saved for the next day or for the next week. That is, you could say, in a way, your only safety net is the food and all the other items that you've hunted, you've gathered, and you put in a safe place so you can have access to it. In nature, that's your only safety net. And in the modern world, that would be the equivalent of you got some money saved up in the bank, and you can access that money anytime you want. You have some kind of savings, emergency savings, so that when something goes wrong, you can tap into that. That's the only safety net. Even then, that's not a real safety net, because you may not have access to that money. If your account is frozen, if there's an emergency type situation, boom, you can't touch that money. Okay. So, but yeah, when you're in a corporate world, there are changes that take place, and you sort of wake up. You're like, whoa, what's going on? And your boss is like, yeah, you have to do this, you have to do that. There's all these things you have to do, and then the expectations change, your workload increases, you have more responsibilities, but you're not necessarily making more money. You're not earning more money. That is kind of like the reality of the workforce. It's part of the ever-changing landscape, capitalistic landscape, and all the complexities and all the competition that comes with that. And me personally, the way I react to that, the way I adapt to that, is by certainly not resisting it or not being mad. I sort of observe it. I sort of look at it for what it is, which is it's highly competitive across the board. And if you wanted to think about it from a political / socioeconomic point of view, you would say there is the neoliberal order, which is the public and the private sector sort of working together in order to create jobs. So it's a top-down system where first you create jobs because you need people to be productive. You need as many people working as possible because you want to minimize government assistance, handouts. So the idea is you want to maximize how many people can earn their own money. And then once you've maximized that by essentially creating as many jobs as possible, you have a low unemployment rate. Then whoever's left behind, depending on their situation and the reason, then they can get some kind of assistance. In many places, it's like in the US, you have a very sort of unorthodox welfare system where it depends on your exact situation. Are you disabled? Are you old? Like, why is it that you're not working and that you need some kind of government assistance? because they're not. It's not like you just get a set amount. It's more so based on your exact situation and why you're not working. But that's essentially the economic system in a nutshell. There's investments depending on new industries. So there's companies that try to build and create, try to hire people. Now the goal is, when I say to try to hire as many people as possible, it doesn't mean that you're just creating jobs for the sake of creating jobs. You're creating jobs that are absolutely necessary, and therefore many people tend to end up getting left out simply because their skill set hasn't kept up with the new requirements of the marketplace. So they're not able to find something, or at least not something that pay enough money, and so they're kind of left out because they just don't have the skill set or the knowledge or the experience, or sometimes maybe they're just too old, they're in the wrong market. There's all kinds of different reasons why somebody might not be able to actually find a job, find employment. Okay, but by and large, that's what it is. And for those who rely on that employment, for those who rely on that paycheck, it's a very shaky situation. Like, sort of like most people are gonna try to build a career and acquire experience, work their way up, have something to provide, be on their best behavior. Because at the end of the day, you need the job and you need the opportunity, but the company also needs you. Company also needs your labor. So it's a very sort of diplomatic it's a diplomatic system where companies don't try to overplay their hand, because they understand they also need the people, the labor. So it's a very sort of game theoretical type of system where you have sometimes what they call, it's an employer's market, sometimes it's an employee's market. The employees have the leverage, they have the upper hand, and sometimes the companies do. In the aggregate, usually individually, the company is going to have the upper hand, right? For each company, usually the company is going to have the upper hand over the employee. But in the aggregate, when there's a lot of jobs and you don't have enough people to fill those jobs, then you kind of have to be nicer to the employee, because you need them more than they necessarily need you. So that's what they call an employee's market. And at that point, you have some leverage. You can ask for more money and things like that. And from what I understand right now, it's more of an employer's market right now, as far as I can tell. And so if you're looking for a job, it's going to be a bit harder. And there's still some, you still have some ability to negotiate and things like that. But by and large, it's an employer's market right now. It's very interesting, which means ultimately, if you could be self-employed, then you wouldn't have that issue, which is the ultimate thing, is how to become self-employed. That's the key question. That's what I'm working on. That's what we're working on right now.